Globus-enabled systems. So what's Globus? It's a secure, reliable service. More than 150,000 registered users rely on Globus. More than 150,000 registered users rely on Globus. So what's Globus? It's a secure, reliable service. With the Globus platform, you can easily incorporate robust capabilities. And if the data is sensitive, no problem. Globus can be used to manage protected data. With Globus, you can easily share your data without having to move it or copy it. With Globus, subscribers can easily move and share. And if you have any more questions about Globus, visit Globus. More than 150,000 registered users rely on Globus. More than 150,000 registered users rely on Globus. If this sounds familiar, you're not alone. Many thousands face the same challenges every day and solve them with Globus. So what's Globus? So what's Globus? It's a secure, reliable service. With the Globus platform, you can easily incorporate robust capabilities. More than 150,000 registered users rely on Globus. More than 150,000 registered users rely on Globus. And if the data is sensitive, no problem. Globus can be used to manage protected data. With Globus, you can easily share your data without having to move it or copy it. With Globus, subscribers can easily move and share. And if you have any more questions about Globus, visit Globus. So how can you get started using Globus? Anyone can use Globus right now for free to transfer files between Globus-enabled systems. So what's Globus? It's a secure, reliable service. More than 150,000 registered users rely on Globus. More than 150,000 registered users rely on Globus. So what's Globus? It's a secure, reliable service. With the Globus platform, you can easily incorporate robust capabilities.
Yo. Yo. What? Yo. 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 What up, though? What is going on? mm, 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 mm. Mm-mm. Alrighty. Quick piece of news content. A moment I never thought I'd see coming. I have an agreement with Ted Cruz. We got a little video. Do the video. See what the video is.
My view is that Congress should proceed slowly. Will there need to be regulations over time concerning AI? Almost certainly. But to be honest, Congress doesn't know what the hell it's doing in this area. This is an institution. I think the median age in the Senate is about 142. This is not a tech-savvy group. I'm serving with colleagues. One of my colleagues in the Senate a few years back referred to the internet as a system of tubes. That does not give great comfort that we should be making rules until we understand what it is we're dealing with. And so my view is we should proceed cautiously, that we should have hearings, that we should listen to experts, that we should consider what are the risks, but we should also be very, very focused on not putting barriers in place that will prevent the United States from leading the world in AI.
No, I don't want to watch
We
it.
found that the Minneapolis.
No. All right. So yeah. At least in part, I agree with Ted Cruz here, which terrifying for me, you know. But what are you gonna do? When someone's right, they're right. They're not a tech savvy group. And it was the exact quote in question from one of his colleagues was, the internet is not a dump truck. It is a series of tubes. And like if I wanted to give somebody the benefit of the doubt, I might be able to meet them there, but no. They are not a tech savvy group. I mean, it's seriously concerning. You know, because even in spite of that, right? Like, so here's Ted talking about, you know, talking about them not being a tech savvy group, but you know, we're gonna go cautiously. Which okay, good ish. And we're gonna have hearings. This is the problem that we have reached. I mean, we kind of been here for a minute, but like it just gets worse and worse every day. the government that we have is not capable of quickly responding to changes. And that leaves us with a serious dilemma because this technology is developing rather quickly. And we are going to be talking about what we should do well into 2025, right? Maybe something might get through, but let's look at the state of the government as it currently exists. Right now, you have, the House nominally controlled by the Republicans, and the Senate nominally controlled by the Democrats, and not really getting things accomplished. You know what I mean? And fighting over like silliness. Hold on one second. I want to send a message. And we're coming up on a presidential election in 2024. When you have something like the Republicans have shown that they're more than happy to not do something to give the American people a chance to have their voices heard while delaying, the nomination of a judicial replacement to the Supreme Court. I imagine something along those same lines that they don't want to enact and quote me, clip it, save this for, the run up to the 2024 election. They're not going to want to pass any laws that have these long-term dramatic effects on, the American public before the people have had a chance to speak and elect who they want to lead them into this brave new world of artificial intelligence, etc., etc., etc. Hello, Ferris. So yeah, we're in trouble. We are in trouble. Oh, there we go. Another quick piece of news. Along with all the other AI programming that has made it onto Twitch, there was I guess an AI Family Guy, and it's already banned. See, it was created on the 7th, so 9 days ago. And it violated the terms of service. Yeah. I'm not going to even read this out loud, but oh, this is fun. This is lovely. All right. Um
Morning,
Okay, I feel like you had another video here, David.
Morning, everybody. David.
Ah, here it is. I found it. They had a chat, Ferris. Okay. So, what we're going to look at today, we're going to go over a video from David Shapiro. We're on a timetable today, so we're only going to be able to get into so much. At 7:20, we're going to be on Stonercast with Jason Society and James from the Internet and 0 Hour Hero and Levelhead will be coming on in the second show, and like that. So the plan is to go over some video and give you some commentary, and then raid into Jason's Society, and then I will take a quick break and get ready for his show. It's his birthday. Always good to make another revolution around the sun. And he's doing a fundraiser for the last prisoner project. Hold on. I like to quote things like, "What up, Magic? What up, Magic?" The last prisoner project, yeah. So we like to support the homies when they're doing fundraisers. So if you got it like that, then please chip in. And if you don't have it like that, keeping your eyeballs on, having the window open increases the viewer count, higher viewer count, attracts more people, so on and so forth. Yeah. All right. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so one of the things related to artificial general intelligence alignment, from the point of view of Dave Shapiro, is how the energy abundance, energy hyperabundance, right? Like, because what we don't want to do, oh, no. My bad. We'll do this one on Monday. I'll be back on Monday. We'll do this one. This is the one I wanted. This is the one related to cyber socialism. Post-labor.
Hello, everybody. David Shapiro.
Hey, Dave. Post-labor economics, right? Like, what does that look like? Like, how does the world change when our economics are not driven by, pursuit of money, but other factors? Like, when, like as Sam Altman indicated, and I completely agree with, that the more you can automate the supply chain, the closer to zero cost you are going to get, because there's a lot of knock-on effect of people doing labor, right? Like, you have to make enough money to do, materials and, equipment, everything else, and then you also have to pay me. What up, Sarah? So inside of all that, like when you start automating those things, then you don't have to pay the people. Like you still have to pay a certain maintenance cost in order to maintain these these pieces of automation, whether they're robots or what have you. But you are going to get nearer and nearer to zero, right? Like for your cost. And the idea behind artificial general intelligence in that regard is it's also going to be like smarter than we are, more intelligent, and it is going to be able to think of things in ways that we would not, and therefore the idea behind it is that it would become even more efficient than it could be under human power, right? Like under human supervision. The other thing is, for me, and this is where David and I differ, is, I regard capitalism as a bottleneck, right? Like the idea that someone has to maximize their profits out of a particular endeavor is going to lead to a bottleneck of resource distribution and, the acquisition of this capital. So we'll see what David has to say about it, and we'll go from there. We'll see.
Here with a brand new video. Today's video, by popular demand, is about post-labor economics. What happens when AI changes work forever? Real quick before we jump into the show, I just want to plug my Patreon real quick. I have a private Discord server for all Patreon supporters, and I do also have several other Discord servers that I am a part of. One is the Gato community, and the other is the Cognitive AI Lab Discord, which I started at the beginning of my YouTube career. So anyways, hop on over to Patreon if you want to support me, get involved in the private conversations. I also have a few higher tier slots available where I have exclusive access, one-on-ones, group chats, on Patreon and on Calendly. So, on with the show. In order to talk about post-labor economics, we need to start by talking about the history of labor-based economics. For the majority of human history, human labor and our energetic output, the physical force that we can apply on the world, has been the biggest driver of productivity. This was 100% true for our oldest ancestors, hunter-gatherers, who had not yet figured out how to harness energy in nature or the energy of animals. It became slightly less true for our agrarian ancestors as they...
I'm waiting. I'm open, I'm the prettiest motherfucker on Twitch, so, hook me up.
They started to use draft animals such as horses and ox, as well as basic machines like water wheels and levers and carts. Now, granted, a lever and a cart don't actually add energy to the equation, but they do allow you to multiply your own force. The Industrial Revolution happened, which of course everyone talks about that because we're in the midst of the fourth Industrial Revolution, was primarily about force amplification or force multiplication. So in other words, we started
Oh, that's news to me because, I don't follow XQC at all, but so you're telling me XQC jumped ship and now he's over at Kick doing a exclusive thing? It's in the New York Times. Not exclusive. Oh, even better for him. Congratulations to XQC. This man once ran a stream where he cleaned his house. And props to him because I have seen other, I saw Asmongold's house and it is clean your room. The only good advice that Jordan Peterson ever gave anyone was clean your goddamn room. I agree. I agree. Yeah, I need lobbyists. I need advocates on my behalf. I need y'all to tell Twitch that I'm worth 100 million or whatever. Like I let's take the 100 million and divide it by the number of hours that XQC streams, because they stream a lot more than I do. So XQC, however much he streams in a month, divide the 100 million by that. That'll be our hourly rate, and I'll take that. I'm not greedy, right? Like I'm not. You know me. I'm not a greedy guy. I'm not a greedy guy. Speaking of, the 2 terabyte storage arrived, but I couldn't download the big videos off the VOD. So that's going to wait until like probably overnight, and I'll get that downloaded, and more YouTube content for all of you who follow the YouTube. Yeah. All right, back to it.
Inventing machines that could use thermal energy from various fuel sources, such as coal and oil, and they were able to output more energy or more work than we could with just our muscles, and certainly more than even large animals could. Another advantage of machines is that they could metabolize fuel at a far higher rate. So, say for instance, a gallon of gasoline. A gallon of gasoline has about 31,000 calories of energy in it, which is about how much I eat in 10 days. But a large machine can use that gallon of gasoline in a matter of minutes or hours, depending on what that machine is doing, such as if it's a large tractor or combine that's being used to manage a farm, for instance. And so not just the amount of work that can be done, but the amount of energy that can be used was the big game-changing factor for the Industrial Revolution. But as everyone knows, a tractor is not particularly smart. It pulls something, it's not any different than what a human can do, or an ox, it's just bigger, faster, and stronger. So that is where the Industrial Revolution, the Industrial Revolution changed labor-based economics, but you still needed an intelligent human driving that tractor. Now, the Industrial Revolution, of course, is a marvel of mechanical engineering.
I'm gonna just move chat. I'm gonna move chat like up here. So any of you who are watching it at home can read this, and like that.
Metal sciences, electronics, and so on. But one thing that we need to point out that is critical is that it all still comes down to the application and use of energy. So human population growth over the last 2 centuries has been tied directly to the amount of energy we had access to, because...
Well, unlike a lot of people, I plan on not dying. And it's worked well so far, so I'm going to keep it up. So I'd like to go from being a renter to being whatever not a renter is in the post-AI.
That also is directly correlated to the amount of food we can produce, the amount of water we can transport and clean and drink. And so basically, what I want to do here is point out that yes, labor is about what humans can do with our hands, our bodies, and what we can do with the use of machines, but we're also still completely dependent upon the underlying sources of...
You don't rent. You're here because you want to be. Like it's like whatever you would call it, where we're like a drum circle, right? Like, and I'm just the lead drummer, baby.
Of energy. So this is an important thing to keep in mind. In the long history of labor and moving up through to today, there's a few basic kinds of labor. And of course, I'm not going to get into every little nuance or detail, but there's 3 overarching categories of labor. So first is manual unskilled labor.
Okay, so right off the bat, I am going to like I fundamentally disagree with the even the concept of unskilled labor. Having done a variety of different kinds of labor, and the fact that skilled and unskilled labor is a moving target based on what kind of argument you want to make, right? I have seen unskilled labor applied to people like plumbers and electricians because they don't use, like, you know, it's not knowledge based, and fuck you, it is most definitely knowledge based. You wire an entire goddamn house from top to bottom and tell me that it doesn't require a whole bunch of technical skill, right? And I say that as someone who has done it. I've done plumbing. I've done landscaping, right? And landscaping requires a level of skill, right? Like, literally the fact that I could work a shovel gave me an edge over someone who could not work a shovel, like who had never done that kind of thing before. So I don't accept that there is. I don't. These are arbitrary. Basically, is what we're talking about. Is like, this is a division of labor that you just wish to do, right? This is just part of the argument. So, moving on.
This includes moving heavy things, using your hands and body basically something that you can pick up in an afternoon. So, for instance, one of the jobs that I had when I was much younger was I was restocking the shelves at a pet store at night. Didn't take a whole lot of brains, took a lot of muscles, moving heavy things, put here, object A in place B, repeat. Then the next level above that is skilled labor. So this
And see, like, above that, like, we don't do that here.
is crafts such as carpentry, electrical work, plumbing, that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
This also could include hospitality and food service, because it's still.
It's important to remember, again, like the majority of people who exist in this space, and especially the majority of people who exist within this space who are going to talk to you for a given value of to you, are like at best on the spectrum are like, liberal, right? Like, but there are few, if any, who come at it with any kind of leftist perspective, right? Like that, that it's just the nature of the environment. It breeds these kind of people, so on and so forth, right? But this is what we have to work with. So we're going to work with what we have rather than, wish and hope we had, I mean, I'm your guy. I'm your leftist, content creator who talks about AI, right? This is what you got. So I'll do my best.
Still very kinetic. It's still very much oriented in your body. But these are things that require training. Some of them require certification. But one thing that they almost always have in common is that it requires you to use tools and materials when you're doing skilled labor. Now, there are jobs such as being a doctor or a nurse that are also very kinetic, but those require.
White collar versus blue collar, I don't really have an issue with as much as it's like, blue collar, you are tending to not work in an office, and white collar, you work in an office, right? Like that's really what it comes down to. So that is a delineation, isn't really an issue, but again, it's more because humans just have this overriding desire to categorize things that we end up with even having to make these kind of delineations in the first place.
Years and years and years of training and certification. And so those, while they are still embodied work, they are still professions or knowledge work. And so then that leads to the third category, which is professional labor or knowledge work, which includes things like architects, lawyers, doctors, things that you do on computers. Even being an influencer technically could be considered a profession, depending on the kind of influencer you are, right? But one rule of thumb is that you do it in a desk or in an office or in front of a computer. And again, this is not always true. Key example being medical professionals, many of whom interact with people all day, every day, and it requires a tremendous amount of training. Excuse me. Ditto for trial lawyers, right? Trial lawyers have to do a lot of office work, but they also have to go to trial, to go to court before judges and so on, magistrates. So one thing that I need to point out, though, is that we have transitioned largely from a unskilled labor and skilled labor economy to a knowledge-based economy or a services-based economy. So this is one of my favorite graphs of all time, and many people are shocked when I tell them about this. So there's a few things to unpack here. So there's a couple of trend lines. This solid green trend line.
And I would assume, Old Lobster, that it requires a particular set of skills that required a particular set of training.
Line is the agricultural share of total employment. So basically what has happened is that as time has progressed, the number of farm jobs has collapsed to around 2% of total employment. And it was much, much, much higher. This was, if I'm reading this correctly, I believe it was over 30% just over 100 years ago. So from 30% of jobs were farm jobs to around 2%. And then this dotted green axis is non-agricultural employment, the left axis. Right axis. So this is percentage, yes. And then the left axis is over here. So the total number of employees that were not farm employees has gone up from around 20 million. Now, also keep in mind that the population was growing at the same time, but from 20 million to over 140 million non-farm jobs. And then finally, agriculture employment has collapsed from around, let's say, about 10 to 12 million jobs total to almost non-existent in terms of total number of employees. So this shows how just a single sector, farming, has completely been changed over the years, largely just due to industrial automation through tractors, combines, and economies of scale with mechanized farming. And this is just one sector. So what people are hoping is that today, all the service jobs that we all hate, all the BS jobs, the desk jobs that we hate today, are going to follow this trend line, the way that jobs have gone. But then there's going to be entirely new categories of jobs that come up. Now, as many of you know,
and that is the one aspect of the whole thing that I don't feel that there's any particular evidence for, other than an appeal to history, right? Because of how historically new technology has eliminated some jobs and created new jobs, that like the math isn't bearing that out. Like we are basically at, replacement levels, right? Like right now, like before all this artificial intelligence stuff jumps off and really gets going, we're already more along the lines of replacement levels. And of course, it can be very difficult to understand what the job numbers mean, because it is not in the interest of the people who are talking about job numbers to really explain what those job numbers mean. But this goes all the way back to like early on in the series when, we were looking at people talking about the fourth industrial revolution and how it is not going to create new jobs in that way, right? It's always possible that I could be wrong and there could be the magic jobby jobs that just show up and great, and everyone, we can continue to muddle through this thing as it currently exists, but I don't see it, right? Like we are nearing a point of refinement when more and more things can be automated, and there's not a job that, the only jobs that are even safe, all the crime bunnies on safe. The only jobs that are safe are the ones that require a level of creativity, because that's what the automation is not currently good at. But do not rest on your laurels, because I don't necessarily agree that, the AI isn't creative now. I have, in fact, made the argument that it is, but people tend to value human-created creativity over automated creativity.
I'm rather skeptical of this. Certainly, it would be an interesting future if there's millions and millions or even billions of new jobs created by AI. I am skeptical that this is going to be the outcome, and let me tell you why.
Hey.
Knowledge work or service sector jobs are rooted in
I should have just let him cook.
What's called cognitive labor or knowledge work. So, as farm jobs have been crashing, knowledge work has been rising. So the majority of work today is knowledge work or cognitive labor. This could also be arguably include emotional labor. So emotional labor is a form of cognitive labor that is more common in nurturing and caregiving roles. Tools like ChatGPT and its successors are going to continue to invade the domain of cognitive labor. So we've already seen some examples of ChatGPT used for tutoring, used for medical advice, used for relationship advice. People have even automated companies, the automatic CEO thing. So it is pretty obvious to everyone by now that these models, that ChatGPT, GPT-4, and so on, are capable of cognitive labor. It would be pretty silly to assume that this does not continue. So that leaves physical labor, skilled labor, unskilled labor, and cognitive labor. But if AI is invading cognitive labor first, what are we going to do? Do we go back to manual labor? Do we all pick up arts and crafts and other semi-skilled and skilled labor? It's not necessarily what I want to do, right? If there's a future state where I'm not going to get paid by anyone, but an AI is going to come through and basically take my YouTube gig from me, right? Like, I don't want to go back to shoveling dirt. And anyways, there's machines that are better at it than humans. So why would I do that? So when you look at those three categories, skilled, unskilled, and cognitive labor, and you say, okay, well, machines are better, stronger, and faster and cheaper at all of those than humans, and they're only getting better, that leaves the question, what are we going to do? So as I was trying to figure out, just trying to find a way to do this, it occurred to me that looking at this from supply side or capability of AI versus humans might not be the right way to look at it. So there's the other way to look at it is demand side.
So one of the things that we are, of course, all aware of, our buddy, our king, the man who makes it all happen, Elon Musk, has a tendency to, for instance, reinvent the subway and give it a fancy name and call it the Hyperloop and like that. And I am, again, I didn't pre-watch, so I don't know. But I wonder if my man is going to get around to cyber socialism, but without saying the words. Let's find out.
So what kind of jobs will people demand or want humans to have specifically? In many cases, you might always prefer to have a human doing something like childcare, hospitality jobs, and other performance-oriented things such as influencers, right? I don't know about you, but every time I find a video that has, an AI face, AI voice, I click off of it. I don't want,
Again, I would just like to point out that Vidal987, who is a creator who made the AI VTuber, is currently running at around 5,000 viewers, and your humble boy here is not that.
Smoke and mirror. I don't want to be lectured at by a sock puppet. I want to see a real human. I want to see their facial expression, their intonation, and I want to develop a parasocial relationship with the people that I follow. And so a parasocial relationship is what most of you have with me, where you have in your mind a model of me, and like you kind of understand where I'm coming from, right? Even though I might not necessarily know all of you. In fact, I don't know most of you. But the desire for that parasocial relationship, for that connection, that human connection, is something that I suspect that most humans are going to want, no matter how good AI gets. Now, that being said, there are probably going to be people that are like, you know what, I don't really care about people. Just give me the information, just give me the entertainment. That's fine. So this leads one final question. Will there be enough of those human exclusive jobs to go around? I don't think there will be. Sure, we might be able to have some back to basics moments where it's like, oh, hey, maybe we can spend more time with our families. Maybe we can spend more time with childcare and education. That's not enough to drive the whole economy. And it's certainly not enough, I don't think, for everyone to have a meaningful career, especially if your interests lie elsewhere. That just doesn't sound good. So now I will introduce you to what I call post-labor economics. And I apologize for the wall of text on this slide, but I figured just a list, you can pause it and read it in much greater detail if you'd like, but I'll just just read the bullet points at the high level. So automation dominance.
And for those of you that this is your first time here, or if you're watching on the VOD, what have you, I always post all the videos to the Discord, so it'll be there later, or you can Google David Shapiro post-labor economics if you don't want to join my Discord because you don't love me and make me sad. And, I slaved all day in a hot kitchen for you to prepare this meal, and you don't. I'm joking.
This is the idea that automation in the form of robotics, AI, and other kinds of automation is going to take over, including for cognitive labor. The second aspect of post-labor economics is the decreased economic value of human labor. Basically, humans can't compete on an economic scale to tractors. Why do you expect that humans are going to be able to compete on an economic scale to AI as its intelligence ramps up? Number three, another criteria or characteristic of post-labor economics is that we will probably see redistributive policies. So redistribution is not necessarily collective ownership. I'm not advocating for socialism. Basically, all I'm advocating for is some form of universal basic income or reverse income tax or that kind of thing. Or negative income tax, sorry. Ownership shifts. So this is the closest thing to socialism or Marxism that I will ever talk about. Because
what up, James? Yeah, like you just can't do it, right? Like you don't want to say it. You don't want to say it. Just lean into it, man. It's not bad. It's not bad. It's not bad over here. We're very accepting. We're very inclusive. It's great. Just say the word. Lean into the concept.
I do not believe in central management of the economy. I don't think that it's a good idea.
And we covered this. Like, on a serious tip, right? Like, I don't know how much contact with the Cybersyn project in Chile and the concept of algocracy people like David have, right? Like it could be a lack of knowledge, or maybe they know and they just reject it because the idea of a centrally planned, or a centrally controlled structure just, makes them nervous in that regard. And again, like, it's not unreasonable because historically, with the exception of the CyberSyn project, centrally planned economies are very slow to act. But as I demonstrated today and often, the systems that we have are slow to react. We have now outpaced their speed to any benefit with our technology. So it is going to be problematic to be able to continue to react to these new technologies, especially as the double exponential curve continues to arc upwards. And join Redbubble and go follow my store. Even if you don't buy anything, just follow my store. Make it blow up, or over there. It just came up, or up there, wherever the thing is. Click the link, make an account, follow me. Makes me happy. And the other thing is, like, I am strongly of the opinion that capitalism, as it currently exists, has become a bottleneck to resource distribution and its desire to maximize the capital in the hands of a few, right? Like, there's nothing democratic about it. A lot of us are forced, all of y'all, me, so all of us are forced to live with the decisions made by people that we have no influence over. And that, to me, sounds like a terrible way to structure a socioeconomic, process. Like, there's nothing special about people who have money. They just have money. Right? That is the entirety of what lets them make the decisions. Now, they may have more education, something like that, but the person themselves, prior to that, there's nothing special about them. There's nothing special about Elon. There's nothing special about Jeff. There's nothing special about any of these people. They just happen to have the resources that they can control where those resources get deployed. And they are going to act in their interests and by their framework. And we don't get any say, but we have to live with not only the externalities of capitalism, but the effects of, how our society changes. And it has continued to change over time. And it is a problem. I don't see how you can say that it is not a problem. If they were special, like, the allowance I could make is that if they were special, then you could make that argument. But they're not kings, and kings weren't even kings, right? There's no divine right. There's no God manifest on earth. There's none of that. They are just a person that, through the vagaries of space and time and that, just ended up being that particular person. What up, Conscious Canuck? With enough money, you can buy specialness in the public eye, though. And this is true, but, like, it's a propaganda loop, right? Like, the meritocracy and all the other crap. We're not going to rehash. I hate rehashing things that everyone already knows because it just takes more time. Counting cards and cheating and pretending like it's merit. Yeah, they have 2 dice and started with twice as much money in the Monopoly game. People are easily persuaded in states of desperation and delusionment. It sucks how effective those campaigns can be. Yeah, no, like, you're not wrong. Like, again, it is difficult, it is challenging sometimes to talk about some of these things with the lexicon that we have. All right. Meh.
I do believe in kind of the wisdom of market forces. But what I do anticipate is that the ownership class might shift. And
Okay, real quick, right? Like, not real quick. Like, okay, just look at the concept of market forces, right? Market forces require, like, the entire concept is that people will buy the things that they want to buy, and they will, like, vote with their dollars and make these decisions, and that will allow the market to respond to them and provide them the things that they want, so on and so forth, right? So, problem number one, I can't buy the things that I want to buy. You know, I can't get the things that I might even need because of my limited amount of resources. Right? And I might not be able to acquire more resources because of the other things that I might need to do within my space. You know? Like, a person might not be able to get a better job because the getting of the better job requires a bunch of hoops that have to be jumped through in order for them to get that job. If they, don't have a car and they have to take, public transit, if they don't have a house and, they live in their car, or any of these number of things. There's a whole bunch of things that the entire concept of market forces ignores. Right? Unless your definition of market forces is just the high level shit, in which case, whatever. Like, for me, it's about the people. Like, you're not getting an adequate representation of what people actually desire. The other issue, how many different kinds of cell phones are out right now? Right? So rather than have like a few, 2, 3, whatever your standard is, or one perfect cell phone that does all the things, we have a variety of different cell phones that are in competition with each other, and they're all using these resources rather than like just having the one and only, the resources go just to that one cell phone. Right? I understand the idea that market competition is supposed to make things better, but if you have the ability to squeeze other people out of the market or acquire a particular resource that is required to do a particular thing, so only your company can do it, or your handful of companies can do it, any of this kind of stuff. Like, this is just Samsung. Okay, so this is going to be well, wrong button. I mean, theoretically, we'll get through this video today. Yeah. Best Samsung phones of 2023. So, like, one company is going to make multiple phones to compete at different price points, right? Because people with less money don't need a better phone for some reason. That is the logic behind this. And maybe they don't, which is why I allow for the idea that like maybe you need like 3-4 levels of phone, you know? Like there's people who use their phone as like a second mobile computer, right? And then there are people who need like their phone for like, you know, photographs and video, right? And then there's people who just don't need any of that stuff. They just want a phone to talk to people, you know. So there's an example, like maybe, and that could even be wrong, and we should just go with the one. I know that my man Zatchap leans towards we should have like one thing that does all the things for that particular type of thing, and I don't have anything against that as a concept. I just allow for the possibility that some variants might be better somehow that I might not be aware of because, you know, I'm not that deep into the cell phone kind of thing. I'm still like, I got an S10, right? My phone is a few years old and it still works. So lately it's been getting a little wonky, but whatever. The market is being far well gatekept by the providers of the goods and services. You're only allowed to acquire the goods and services the providers let you acquire at your designated economic tier. Like, yeah, if you just want to say it in a couple of sentences and not get, like, you know, 15 minutes of content out of it. Apple and Android stores have nearly the same shit but different walled gardens. Yeah, no, 100%. Like, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. All right. No. Listen.
We might shift more towards decentralized ownership models or collective ownership models such as co-ops. And this is not something that I invented. These are things that exist today. But with the aid of AI, it might be easier for ordinary people to band together to collectively buy resources, property, and other capital goods that allow them to be to participate in the means of production.
So close. So close. Just say it. Just say it. Just say it. It won't hurt you.
Now, I'm not going to say that this is going to totally replace all corporations, but if we can stick the landing with technologies like blockchain and decentralized autonomous organizations, then we can have expert, AI CEOs managing our resources for us. Another component of post-labor economics, I suspect, will be price deflation. And so what I mean by this is that as AI gets better at producing more goods and services, the marginal cost of those goods and services is going to collapse. And it's not all goods and services. Some things are going to remain expensive, or at least more expensive than others, but other things are going to get very, very cheap. And I'll go into some details in just a moment. We're also going to need new economic indicators. So what I mean by this is that GDP and employment rates, I tried to say both of those at the same time, unemployment rates are not going to be quite as meaningful in the future as they are today. Right now, total employment and unemployment rates are really important indicators for how well the economy is doing. But in a post-labor economy, employment rate won't matter as much. So we might need other other metrics in order to measure how well the economy is doing. There's probably also going to be changes in consumption patterns. So for instance...
And then, again, like, pause Champ Andy... But, like, he's got to tie it around the idea of the economy, right? Like, if you just step back, like, I understand that my man is against this as a concept, but just take a step back. Just put everything on the table, right? We'll talk about everything. Then maybe economy is not the word that we should be using. Maybe there's a different definition, a different word, a different concept that we can run with rather than economy and all the baggage that comes with it, right? Like, if you don't have an economy, but you just make sure that the people are getting their material needs met, and you're automating all the things and all that other stuff. Maybe there's a new word that we need to try. And I'm not being facetious. I'm not being like, you're Marxist. I mean, like, maybe there's just different concepts that could be at play if you're willing to put everything on the table. Logistical network, that's as good a thing as any off the top. That kind of stuff. Let's put everything on the table and take what works.
We're going to have more leisure time and less requirement to work. And so that means that we'll probably change where we live, how we eat, access to other services like healthcare will probably decline because we'll be living healthier lives, I hope, and so on and so forth. One of the toughest nuts to crack is actually going to be item number 8 here, which is reshaping our identity and self-worth. And we have actually a few slides dedicated to this coming right up. And then finally, number 9 is regulatory changes that will basically have to be addressed as we transition from a human labor economy to a post-labor economy. Okay.
Just real quick, because what up, ATS? I'm kind of drawn to talking about material repositories in deference to open source. Yeah, like, and again, like, there's a lot of stuff that we are discussing, especially like around AI, where the lexicon that we have been using for quite some time is insufficient or inadequate or just incorrect, and we need to talk about that, to redress these. So, reshaping identity and self-worth. In the absence of traditional work, societal attitudes towards identity, self-worth, and purpose may need to evolve, decoupling these concepts from economic productivity. Like, this is at the core of what a lot of people in the, communist, socialist, what have you sphere talk about, is the decommoditizing, the decommodification, of the things that we have, and that we're not defining ourselves by the work that we do, and we decouple things like food and healthcare and all these other, and housing, from work, right? From labor. And this is why, again, like, my man will dance around using a particular word because it makes him feel icky or whatever. But as a replacement for free stores for normies, while distribution networks just fit. Yeah, no, like, what do I need? Right? What do I need? I can order it to my house. I can requisition it through the Amazon AI, and it's delivered, or I can, go and acquire it from my local repository, my local distribution, whatever. Like, and then the algorithm just reprioritizes a particular set of resources to go from point A to point B. This is literally how Amazon and Walmart work at this moment in time. It's just the money that gets in the way.
Okay, so let's unpack these. I mentioned the ownership of production. So this basic question is, who owns the machines? Who owns the means of production? So if things continue the way that they are, we run the risk of continued trends of capital concentration and or regulatory capture. So regulatory capture is what everyone is afraid of, with companies calling for regulation of AI, because it's like, okay, well, if only a few players are allowed to participate, then by virtue of everyone else getting regulated out of existence, only the top players are allowed to play. That would probably be problematic for the rest of us. Now, as I mentioned, I'm not going to advocate for Marxism or socialism or anything like that. I'm not saying that we should collectively seize the means of production. Reason being that market forces still work, and centralized management pretty much never works, at least not full-scale national levels. We will need more sophisticated models of ownership than exist today. So, for instance, As I mentioned,
Oh,
co-ops,
please.
collective ownerships. I've got a few examples in the next slide.
Yeah, like you just really just don't want to. You just really don't want to. You just really don't want to. Like, I can't, how can I argue with you don't want to? Like, I can't.
Believe. But otherwise, if corporate payrolls shrink and many of us lose jobs, how then are we going to redistribute the benefits obtained by the technologies? Who's going to
How?
reap the rewards? So one component of that is robust redistribution.
My man went.
So whether
All right, hold on. We'll let him cook. But my man went to the goddamn water cycle, and he's got the laughing Reagan meme down here. Like, what? Like, bruh. What up, No Gray? Welcome, welcome. Oh. I love you. You're still my favorite Shapiro, but like, you really just don't want to say it, bro.
whether or not we change ownership, because obviously many people will still kind of have the idea of the value of private property and that sort of thing. And certainly I think that private property is going to exist.
My man No Gray does streams and does philosophy. And I know that some of you, you hear philosophy and you're like, oh, because the philosophy bros and stuff like that and like that. But philosophy is important. Like, there is nothing about this AI, AGI, all this stuff that we talk about here. There's nothing that is separate from all the facets of the human condition, and philosophy is one of them. It's like how we treat the robots, our concept of ethics, how we treat an AI that has a subjective experience, and just like, the whole thing of the trolley problem with the fully automated car that has to choose to hit an old lady or a child when it's driving. Like, all these things, this is all stuff that is already going on under the human condition that we need to really just deal with. My favorite meme about the trolley problem is, you could have just stopped the trolley, right? You didn't have to keep driving. But yeah, like, so by all means check them out. It's a great experience. If you like what I do here, it's a similar vibe, except they actually like have certificates to back up what they're talking about, and I'm just a guy who knows stuff.
That being said, not everyone is going to be a landowner, right? Not everyone is going to own a robot factory or anything like that. So we're going to need to have some kind of robust redistribution policy. So that could come in the form of universal basic income or more sophisticated models. And I always liken it to a hydrological cycle. So money, like water, tends to flow towards some kind of accumulator. Now, in our world, those accumulators tend to be federal governments and the capitalist class in form of shareholders and corporations. So money tends to flow in those two polar directions. And so then redistribution comes in the form of government handouts, government subsidies, that sort of thing, and taxes, right? Some being skimmed off the top of corporations in order to go to the government and then to be redistributed. So the idea here is then you need a policy that basically makes it rain, right? You want it to rain a certain amount in every region, and you want it to rain fairly. You don't want too much rain because that's inflation and that's bad, and you don't want too little rain because that's deflation and that's also bad. So the idea is that these future redistributive policies need to distribute the money, like the water, evenly, fairly, and in a controlled policy. So this is not exactly your grandpa's trickle-down economics theory. And
again, people don't need money. There is no one who needs money, right? Money is an instrument. It's a tool like any other. Like what you need is the things that money gets you, right? Like we are talking about resources. The idea that we need to like take this money and then have the money go to other places, and then those places will give us the money, and the money will rain down in some fair, even distribution, and then you can take the money to go do the things. To me, just adds an unnecessary level of complication. It's like, just give us the resources, right? I don't need the money. You can keep the money. Give me the resources. Since the reaction time of the autonomous vehicle is 100 plus times that of a human and the perception field is 360 degrees, choosing to hit the old person or the child just wouldn't happen. The idea is that, like, both the old lady and the child jump out at the same time, and it's like a thing, and, robots are currently poor at dealing with random events and like that. But hey, I got another solution. Limit the amount of vehicles that we have so we can limit the amount of autonomous vehicles on the road, and and decouple society from the concept of the car. Then it's easier, right? Bots can't make moral choices. They're just like, to an extent, we might not want them to, but I mean, that goes hand in hand with the whole concept of alignment, right? And why you have to be careful, because if you teach the bot to value life, there aren't as many humans as there are other forms of life, and it might choose to remove the smallest segment of life necessary, like a trolley problem on a global scale. Like if I get rid of all the humans, then I can protect the maximum amount of life. Or, if I eradicate all the humans who aren't willing to go along with what I'm doing and misbehave according to the, artificial declaration of existence that I create as the AGI, then so it's important, and we're right back to philosophy. See what happened?
I mentioned collective ownership, and there are a few examples of collective ownership out there. Now, granted, none of these are global scale, but we've got a long time before we need to worry about global scale redistribution. Some of them are national scale, which is a good thing, but of course, Norway is not as big as America. So there's a few examples. So one is the Alaska Permanent Fund, which is basically that pretty much every Alaskan gets a annual check for collective ownership of the oil reserves in Alaska. The Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund, pretty much the same thing, but for all citizens of Norway. And it is a trust fund that is used to fund public services, and it is funded by their oil reserves. The Mondragon Corporation is an owner-operated corporation in Spain. And then the Green Bay Packers are an NFL team that is unique among the NFL, that is collectively owned by 360,000 shareholders. So on the topic of collective ownership and redistribution, Sam Altman does want to do something in line of this, basically saying if OpenAI owns the means of production, aka GPT-4, 5, 6, and 7, and whatever other downstream models they come up with, he has explicitly said that he wants to kind of create a trust fund of sorts that is then used to distribute that surplus of wealth. And this is part of one of his ideas, which is WorldCoin. Now, what I will say is that I'm not sure that this entire project should be piloted and mediated by a Silicon Valley CEO
Yeah, like, I mean, we do need some kind of priority list to the things that we talk about. I don't disagree, but the idea, like, there are some people who are a little too patient for even starting these conversations, starting conversations around AI safety and alignment and those kind of things, redistributive models, dealing with the issue of climate change. It's like, we really need to start now. Like, don't use language that makes it sound like we can put it off to some indeterminate point in time in the future. We we really need to be having these conversations now, and we need to develop a model where we can affect the change, because I guarantee goddamn you that if we did a global referendum on climate change and like how we need to lean into electrification and away from fossil fuels, that sucker would pass. Right? There's enough people who live in the day-to-day circumstances that are being brought about. Like, you could get all of Canada, well, not all of Canada, because there will always be 25% of people everywhere who just don't get it. But I'm confident you would have a global referendum on climate change, and then we would just be like forcing these oil companies, coal companies, etc., to stop doing it right now, as opposed to some future point in time that may never occur because we might not get to exist so long.
Silicon Valley CEOs don't exactly have a good track record in terms of.
It just has to do with whenever I see one of those things, like anything political, like there's always 25 to 27% of people who just are not, they're just not,
of being fair and not allowing power to corrupt them over time. Now, this is not a personal indictment of Sam Altman. I very often agree with what he says, but that being said, he is in a position of a lot of privilege and power, and so therefore should be scrutinized. We should engage with a healthy level of skepticism, and I have a feeling that he would invite that healthy skepticism as well. But again, I don't disagree with the sentiment. Were I in his place, I would probably be trying to do the same exact thing. But again, actions speak louder than words. So another thing is that collective ownership doesn't necessarily have to happen on a national scale or a state scale. It can happen on local scales, and does in the form of land trusts. So there are plenty of examples of collective ownership that exist today.
And this again leans to like the conversation that I had with Arun, where we talked about the rare moment where I got Arun to talk about American politics, and Arun was talking about that community-based process, right? Like, and what ATS was talking about earlier with the distribution thing is like, you need to get the resources to the people who are closest to ground level, and then allow them to get the things that they need in order to accomplish their local goals. Like, and again, this is all doable with algorithms. Like, so I just wish I could get him to, shining flashlight in one ear and yes, that.
Now, one thing that is kind of the...
Like, he literally invented his own... Perfect pause here. He literally invented his own thing, the PLE, rather than, do anything with something that already exists.
primary, let's say, primary complaint that I get when I talk about redistributive policies such as universal basic income, which is, what about inflation?
Exactly.
So
Exactly, ATS.
there is some merit to this idea. So redistribution, such as universal basic income, can actually be a force for inflation. We did see a small but not negligible effect from the stimulus checks here in America that caused some of the inflation. Now, I will say that aggregate supply and aggregate demand and other supply chain issues are far larger effects of the current inflationary paradigm that we're seeing.
And one other thing, like people tacking on, or corporations tacking on an arbitrary additional 10%, what have you.
That being said, the stimulus checks did cause some inflation because they created higher aggregate demand.
Yeah, it was
which
like
is basically
0.2%,
that consumers overall
something-
have more money to
something
spend,
negligible.
therefore prices go up. Another thing that can drive inflation is inelastic supply. So as global wealth goes up due to AI, as more productivity goes up and demand goes up broadly, there are going to be goods and services and other.
I will say that it did, but again, it was like point something percent. I want to say it was 0.2. That's what's sticking in my head. It was just a very negligible amount compared to a variety of other factors, of which price gouging was way more significant. So again, like the idea of driving things through the use of dollars, like we can get rid of the concept of inflation. Like you're attaching so many of your 22nd century ideas to 18th century concepts, and you just need to let them go, dude.
Other supplies that do not scale. So, for instance, one of the most limited resources on the planet is rare minerals like lithium and cobalt. No amount of AI is going to make there be more AI and cobalt, unless, of course, it can dig deeper into the Earth's crust or go to asteroids and mine them there, which is entirely possible. I did mention that in a previous video as one of the possible solutions to mineral scarcity. That being said, there's only ever going to be so much desirable beachfront property in Monaco, right? So there's going to be some kind of scarcity that we cannot overcome, no matter how much cognitive surplus that we have. Now, all that being said, there will be some inflationary pressures that we can't really get rid of, but I think that in the long run, they are going to be offset by and large by some really profound and strong deflationary pressures. So for instance, a deflationary pressure is something that lowers prices. So the job loss that I am anticipating from AI is going to reduce consumer demand until that is somehow fixed or replaced, because with job losses, people are going to hoard their money a little bit more. We saw this happen during the pandemic, for instance, where people spent a lot less money because it was a time of uncertainty. If you lose your job, as many people in some of the communities that I'm a part of have been laid off as part of the tech layoffs, they don't know if or when they're ever going to get a job again. Like, that's a pretty profound thing. So job loss results in deflationary pressure because people are spending money less and driving demand down. In fact, one of the things that my wife and I are doing is we're going to be downsizing, right? Rather than having a house payment, we're going to move to a smaller house that we can fully pay off. Market saturation is another deflationary pressure. So for instance, I did mention earlier that some goods and services will continue to go down in price. One personal example that I have is that the first time I had my novel professionally edited, I spent $1,700 to have a world-class professional editor take a look at my novel. After I got that feedback from her, I then, not long after that, I got access to GPT-4, which has a much larger context window, and I was able to pretty much get developmental feedback or line editing feedback on the entire thing for less than $17 twice. So that is a 100x drop in price. And it's really difficult for people to wrap their heads around the possibility that many goods and services are going to be 1,000x cheaper or 10,000x cheaper in the coming years. So this downward pressure due to the abundance of AI is going to be something that is kind of like a default raise for everyone if it works out that way. So in the case of medicine, or the total cost of healthcare in America is $4.3 trillion per year. Imagine if within a few years, AI is able to reduce the total cost of healthcare in America by a factor of 100. I know that this sounds completely ludicrous, and it probably will take a little bit longer than a few years because the medical establishment is very slow, very onerous, and is very resistant to change. But imagine if your healthcare costs, whatever they were last year, if you spent, a few $100s on a couple medications.
Well, like, I don't disagree as things currently stand, but the nature of how AI and AGI is going to develop is going to put a variety of pressures on them that are just, they're not something that they're going to be able to resist. It's not something that they're going to be able to opt out of. And that's what's going to push that price collapse. And I see it as, even like, because he still needs to keep this within a capitalist model. He's talking 4.3 trillion to 43 billion. I'm looking more along the lines of, like, what are the costs of supplies? And that would be the extent, the cost of supplies and distribution, rather than any kind of profit taking. Here's how much job loss in the pandemic overshot any inflationary pressure from one-time stim checks, meaning corporate greed soaked up yet more profit. There is the side-by-side article headlines of, like, workers lost $1 trillion in buying power, and billionaires got $1 trillion more in buying power. And it's like, you're not wrong. They will not opt out. They will attempt to control it, so we will still have to pay them. I don't see so how do I put this? The nature of how artificial intelligence is going to transform the nature of everything that we do, and the pressures that it is going to put on them, they are not going to have this. It's going to be unrecognizable, right? Like, we cannot properly comprehend a world in which, like, for instance, all the jobs are done by automation, right? There will be something. I mean, that you're already coming up to that in things like I can't remember the name of it right now, but there's a medical bot that is like significantly advanced. The ChatGPT model, LLM model, is passing a variety of medical exams. There are automation. Neuralink makes really high-end surgical robots. AlphaFold 2 is incredibly outpacing its human competitors, and is doing the things that that require what people would assume require a human. Conversation. Check the highlights with Corey Campbell, the most recent one. He was talking about that there's a protein that is a what you call it. You put it in your car to prevent it from freezing. Antifreeze, thank you. The antifreeze protein, and in order for this antifreeze protein to function, it requires something outside the protein, right? It's water. It requires H2O molecules to be contained within this protein once it's folded. And AlphaFold 2 was able to predict that thing existed, right? That was part of this. So you're going to continue to see this kind of thing happen where, like, you're not going to have any justification for charging these exorbitant amounts, and it would begin to also undercut them on a functional level because some other billionaire with some other amount of money is going to start an AI automated drug company and undercut them on price, right? And this will continue to happen. And like when I say it's going to be transformative, I mean it is the most transformative technology in the history of humankind. Bigger than fire, bigger than the wheel, bigger than all of it.
In one trip to the doctor, or if you have chronic conditions that require a lot of medications and a lot of tests, and you spend $5,000, imagine if you only had to spend $50 last year instead of $5,000, and that's not with socialist policies or single payer systems where the government foots the bill. I'm talking about the actual cost of healthcare could collapse that much in the long run due to AI, and so that is a tremendous deflationary pressure.
Like, he's willing to go part way to say this in the same thing. Like, these are the people who are around the AI, the people who work in the industry and study the things, they are willing to go almost there. All I'm doing is taking their arguments, their concepts, their conclusions to the next logical conclusion. They limit themselves by this requirement to maintain these market forces, and I've already demonstrated that you can circumvent those market forces, that you don't require dollars, you don't have to deal with inflation, you don't have to deal with deflation, you don't have to deal with any of these things in our economy. You can circumvent all that and just provide the resources to the people who need them, and that this centrally planned economy can be run off an algorithm. And again, that's demonstrated with CyberSyn, and that was in the 1970s. We're significantly more advanced now. There is nothing holding us back other than, the will to do so, or a technology so disruptive that it cannot be avoided. And that is where we're at. Either the nature of capitalism as it currently exists, with its late stageness and its bottleneck redistribution or distribution policies, it's going to go one of two ways, because as there will be a tipping point where a number of jobs are replaced with automation, and you will either have to have set up a system whereby people are fed and housed and clothed and all that, or you're going to have a bunch of people whose children are hungry and they are going to make decisions.
So basically, deflation means that your dollar goes much farther. Another thing to consider is that in many cases, there are elastic supplies. So imagine the knock-on effects of AI enhancing everything from supply chains at every level, reducing the need for middlemen, reducing the need for humans and human labor, which is really expensive. So all the goods and services that you get, even if an AI is not directly used in creating that final good or service, it's still going to help the entire process, which means that the entire economy is going to be a lot more elastic, which will also drive down prices. Now we get to the hardest part of all of this. The rest, I think, is going to happen no matter what we do, right? There is just so much economic incentive to drive down prices because that's what capitalism does, right? It seeks efficiency when it's working well. It doesn't always work well, so I'll throw that caveat out. Now,
Thank you.
That being
Appreciate
said,
that.
the inevitable conclusion of all this seems to be that we are going to arrive at a situation where most of us are going to be looking in the rearview mirror and say, bye job, right? Like our conventional jobs are going to go the way of the dinosaurs. And so one of the most common sentiments that I get, and it's always worded slightly different, but there are permutations of this thing, which is I would rather die than live on government handouts. This happens more often than not. There are numerous reasons for this feeling, and it is important to consider because what else is the point of being alive? Excuse me. So there are cultural reasons, ethical reasons, religion, spirituality, and even familial history, identity, gender norms, all kinds of stuff will push people to identify with their job or to really value their self-sufficiency, right?
And this is why I have repeatedly stated that it is better for us to understand where people are coming from, why they think the way that they do, rather than just dunk and meme on them for feeling a particular way about stuff. Most, if not all people, come to where they are honestly, right? Like they're not intentionally lying to themselves. They are just culturally, or like you said, familial history. There's a number of factors involved in driving people to have the the opinions that they do and the ideas that they do. They didn't get there out of nowhere. This is what, like, your dialectical materialism, the analyzing of material conditions, and all these things. It is just because of a particular, like, I would be a different person if I was in Elon's shoes, right? And you should understand that about yourself. You would be a different person if you grew up under different conditions, right? And it is much easier to have certain views based on your material conditions. So when we're talking to people, it is of more utility, it has more value, however you want to put it, to understand how they got how they got where they are, so that you can talk to them and empathize with them and have a real discussion rather than just, dunk and meme on them, because dunk and memes just drive them back into their, the thing that they already know, right?
Right. Self-sufficiency, rugged individualism, self-reliance, that sort of thing. These beliefs come from numerous places, whether it's, the culture, particularly here in America, in many families, like you're not considered a real man unless you're a provider, right? Particularly for men, you might expect yourself and be expected to be the primary breadwinner. Careers also do a lot for our sense of purpose, our sense of excellence and competence. A career is a good source of challenge. It's a good way to feel good about yourself, like you've done something. And then for even people that are not men, independence is often predicated on the ability to make ends meet. And so what I mean by this is that if you need to get away from your family or a toxic friend group or whatever, if you need to stay out of prison because you need to stay away, from the street, you might need that good job. And so if you don't have that good job, you might be forced back into a bad situation. So there's a lot of reasons that people are afraid of not having their job. So what I've been able to identify is that after talking with some of these people and thinking through it, is there's two primary threads here. One is, what if I can't take care of myself and the people that I care about? That's really the core fear, at least one of them. Another core fear is, what if my sense of agency and autonomy is taken from me?
And those
what
are valid.
if I am just subservient to the whims of the government, right?
Like one of the driving factors behind people who make massive amounts of money, is like your Elon. Elon has a tremendous amount of agency and autonomy, right? Like, and from his point of view, that agency and autonomy is very important. He doesn't want to be told what to do. He wants to be able to do the things that he wants to do. And that's where that comes from. And we all want agency and autonomy. Like, it's part of Maslow's hierarchy. Like, that is an important thing to have. The entire concept of freedom. It is just how we perceive these within the current context that are the issue, right? Like a patriot type is going to perceive freedom in a different way than someone who's a leftist. A leftist sees, having more control in the, seizing the means and having, healthcare free at point of service and having, a minimum, COLA, kind of thing where you all your material needs are met is going to supply them with additional freedom. They are going to perceive it in that way, where a patriot type is going to see themselves as like, the more that, my stuff has to go through these like government entities or what have you, is going to restrict my ability to do the things that, I wish to do. Like, it's my property. Why can't I do what I want on my property? There are, again, looking at it from their point of view, this is an honest, valid concern, right? Like, and it's how we address those concerns, and some of that involves cultural changes, and cultures change over time. So it's not like anything culture is set in stone. Those aren't just valid. They're problems that only socialism can address with AI. From where I stand, this is why you and I agree on a great many things, is that's one of them, is like that by, like, why do my response to the what if I can't take care of myself and the people I care about, admittedly, I'm going to live forever and what have you, but like, if I was a regular person who wasn't going to live forever, why do I need to take care of myself and the people that I care about? Why is it have to be me? Is it more important that I take care of them or that they are taken care of? And it's a value, a weighting of these two values. And for me, it is more important that the people that I care about, all of humankind, are taken care of more than I do it. I don't need to be king and dispense my riches throughout the land. I need my people to be taken care of, right?
So one of the potential solutions to this is a concept from ancient Greece called arete, which is excellence, or the pursuit of excellence. So in this case, the ability to feel competent about something in order to feel a sense of mastery and challenge, this is a social phenomenon that was based on social reward and social incentive, even if there was no financial reward. So what I mean by this is that particularly in the elite classes like aristocracy and capitalist class and owner class, the individual behaviors, the individual sense of competence and achievement didn't necessarily come from a career. It came from other achievements, whether they were academic achievements, participating in public life, having a good family. so on and so forth, or even independent competitions, right? Playing polo and yacht racing and all the other stuff that rich people do for fun and for challenge. You know, they do martial arts, they go on adventures and so on and so forth. The acquisition of status symbols is part of that sense of excellence, but there are plenty of other ways to achieve excellence. So other aspects of pursuing the pursuit of excellence include that mastery, that social recognition, right? In many cases, it's a matter of achieving that status in the eyes of the people that you care about. For instance, going back to that idea of being the breadwinner, that head of household recognition, the recognition that you are a good man who takes care of his family, or that you're a good mother who takes care of his family, or whatever it happens to be. There are other ways to signal tribal belonging. For instance, think about all the guys that go to watch the game together at the bar. That is something that gives them a sense of belonging and even a sense of excellence. If your team wins, you feel like you have benefited from that competence. And all of this is possible without a conventional career. Now, that being said, I will say that it does take time to adapt. I know this personally because I left my conventional career just earlier this year, and I kind of floundered around for a while. It was weird, right? And I still struggled with finding, okay, how is it that I can feel productive? How is it that I can feel meaningful and valuable? And so those metrics change, right? Now it's a matter of how many views my videos get. Now it's a matter of what we talk about when I go to the meetups that I host and that sort of thing. Now, that being said, I will say that without a conventional career, finding something to be proud of, mastery, challenge, all of that still exists. And it's still a need, too. One example is I picked up a guitar. So when I had my camera moved,
he's a capitalist, right? Like, he understands that he controls his own means of production, but he's still like a capitalist. It's still we'll get it there.
You probably saw that I had a guitar in the background. That is a very fancy, nice guitar that I have not yet learned to use that a friend gave to me many years ago. I got a very simple guitar that has only 3 strings to start learning on. But my point is that one of my dreams for myself is that I will one day learn how to play guitar, and I can sit around the campfire and play guitar and sing with my friends, and that is going to be something that I can derive a sense of excellence or a sense of mastery from. Might never get there because I am both tone deaf and I have awful timing. So, anyways, I wanted to close this with physical fitness is one of the most familiar models that people have with pursuing excellence. We all know a bunch of gym bros and gym rats who really bank a lot of their pride and their ego on looking good and feeling good and being fit and looking sexy, right? That is a model that everyone has. A lot of people do this, and it's not for financial gain. It is purely for the pursuit of excellence. And so you take that gym model, and there's all kinds of other stuff you can do with that. A lot of my friends are gamers, and some of them even game competitively. Same exact need being met is you get that challenge, you get the reward of winning, or otherwise getting recognition for your excellence. Now, the other part, and this is actually a little bit harder to address, is autonomy, self-determination. Losing your autonomy is a major cause of burnout, which is true for me. You can check out a video on my other channel talking about burnout. It's also a cause of rebellion and despair. So in many cases around the world, when rebellion has happened, it is because the citizenry lost their sense of autonomy, either due to oppression or just economic collapse. And they said, okay, we're not really happy with this. We're going to take the power back. So this is a legitimate fear. And let me underscore why. If the jobs go away, which I predict they will, then your money goes away. And particularly in America, your personal autonomy is directly tied to your wallet. Your financial power this is actually an explicit policy of neoliberal societies, is that the freedom in a neoliberal society is freedom to spend money however you choose. But this has the dark side of that is that if you don't have money, you're not free, which everyone knows that in America, right? This is something that people have said, like, oh, you're only as free as your dollar, right? So this is not a new phenomenon, and this is why people are afraid of AI ultimately taking their jobs, at least one of the reasons. This is a very powerful incentive, and I've actually had conversations over many, many years, particularly with conservatives, that they say that this is actually a very deliberate policy in order to motivate people to work harder. And the idea is that the fear of not having money and the fear of losing your freedom is a powerful motivating factor. And of course, this is the de facto policy of America for several decades. And it's taken even further because part of that fear, part of the motivating people away from poverty, is that poverty is something to be ashamed of, particularly in America. Poverty or being poor is seen as a moral failing or even a sin. That if you're poor, not only do you deserve it, but it's your fault because you're a bad person. And in this case, the more money you have, the more free you are, but also the more virtuous or righteous you are. And this goes back to our Protestant and Puritan roots. So personal agency, or
See what I'm saying? He has all the pieces, right? Like they're all there. It's just that one last little bit. One last little bit. I can save him.
self-determination or autonomy is inextricably tied to your financial power. This is a very problematic mentality. And I'm not saying that, like, if you feel this way, it's not your fault. I'm saying that, like, the fact that this exists in our zeitgeist is that's the problem. Now, with post-labor economics, this is my hope and dream, is that with post-labor economics, if optimal redistribution, so remember the idea of the rain clouds dropping rain everywhere, if optimal redistribution is achieved, then our individual autonomy should increase. So what I mean by this is that first, abundance of free time. Imagine that your need for working a day job goes away. So suddenly you have 40 hours of per week back. That's all yours. So free time is one component of autonomy. The other thing is the decrease in cost that we talk about. So if a lot of goods and services go down in price, then whatever money you do have is actually going to take you further. So basically your financial power is effectively increased even if you don't make as much money. Now, that being said, the biggest problem, the elephant in the room for all this, is that trust in the American system is low. The government has a poor track record of sticking the landing on these kinds of things. And this is not something that you and I can fix. This is something that
This is my, what up, Lucian? This is my thing as well. Like either there is a fear of centralized planning that is so strong to them that it makes them unable to, cross that particular Rubicon, or they are taking the language and making it palatable to people who believe in the system as it currently exists. Functionally, it could be the same. It depends on, what the end result of the whole experiment is. But, like, I will take either of those at this point in time from where I'm standing right now. Like, in the future, I hope that everyone, moves. But for the right now, convincing the capitalist owner class that it is in their best interest to make it rain, I will take that from where we're standing.
the government has to decide to fix. Now, as we wind down, we're getting closer to the end of the video. So this is kind of for us nerds, the metrologists, the metricians, who really want to say, okay, well, how do we measure this stuff? And this is just kind of like me throwing wet spaghetti at the wall. As I mentioned earlier, existing key performance indicators, KPI, like labor force participation rate, probably won't matter as much in the future. We're going to need to measure economic productivity and individual well-being through entirely different means.
I mean, to a point, I can visualize again a distribution model where where we don't have a currency, where you just, you take what you need and the automation resupplies it. Is that a little bit like, does that feel like magic from where we're standing? Absolutely. Like the idea that this stuff is coming out of nowhere. But if you really sit down and think about it, if you can automate all levels of the thing and you drive the entire process via algorithm, it's not magical at all. It's just, it's complex because we've grown up in a world where that is not the case.
But this underscores the key question, which is, what are we trying to optimize for? GDP is a proxy for a lot of other things, but it's also an aggregate number that is on its own relatively useless. Just kind of like how the stock market is an aggregate number that, for you and me on a day-to-day basis, pretty useless. So one idea that I had was a well-being index, which would be based on self-determination theory.
Same way, like, what is a luxury, right? And you have to also picture the societal and cultural change that come along with having everyone's needs met. Like, a lot of luxuries are performative purchasing, where you are, you're peacocking, right? I have an 80-inch TV on my wall to show off, that I am the 80-inch TV guy, right? Like, I can do this with my power and autonomy, right? Fancy car, anything, the latest pair of Jordans, whatever is your particular bit. That is primarily driven by a form of, like, competition, that I am showing off what I am capable of to the people around. Do you need an 80-inch TV? If you don't need it, then do you really want it? Or do you want a right-sized TV? And then you have the right-sized TV. So a lot of things that we define as luxuries will lose their value. Like, if we didn't associate diamonds with, like, marriage and wealth and, like, peacocking, then diamonds would basically collapse in value, other than as some form of industrial tool for being, kind of super hard, right? Like, people looking terrible is an entire. That's a subjective judgment. Like, if you like what you're wearing, don't look at me like that, David. If you like what you look like when you wear what you wear, then I have no opinion of that, right? This goes along with my opinion on food, right? Like, there's no point in time where it should occur to you to tell me how I should eat my food and judge me for it. If I like my steak so rare that it's, bleeding on the plate, or if I like my steak cooked to leather and covered in ketchup, this is none of your concern. The very act of you judging my food that I am going to eat for my personal sustenance and pleasure, why should I care what you think, and why do you care about how I eat? You know what I mean? Like, this is a thing. You shouldn't, the toilet paper thing. Do you fold over or do you fold, under? And it's like, the only thing I care about the toilet paper is that there is some. Right? If you spend more time concerned about if it goes this way or it goes that way, and not enough time checking to make sure that there's enough toilet paper or the next person who uses the bathroom, you need to reassess your life. You need to reassess what you consider empathy. It starts at home, and I'm not joking. When you get up and you leave the bathroom, do you check to make sure that there's toilet paper for the next person? It's a whole thing, ATS. It's just how I feel. No one can tell me how to eat my food, and I really, it's one of those things that I think are weird. Things that are not necessary to basic function and survival, the quality and variation of goods and services. Yeah, but it's like one of those. It's like we talked about cell phones earlier before you got in. Samsung offers 24 different cell phones. Why not just one or three or like a much smaller number? Then what's a luxury in a cell phone if all cell phones are functionally the same and at the highest of quality, or within a given framework based on whatever you might need it for?
And so it would measure a population's well-being based on autonomy, mastery or competence, and connection. So that would be like, how much free time does everyone have in your nation? How much social mobility do they have in terms of the ability to live where they want and go on the vacations that they want to and take on the leisure activities that they want to? So autonomy would be a really important thing to measure and try and optimize for. Mastery or competence would be another thing. And that's a lot harder to measure in aggregate, because for some people, it looks different for everyone. For some people, mastery might be getting a third PhD. For other people, it might be joining, a football league or something. It's really difficult to measure. And then finally, connection is the third component of self-determination theory, or SDT. And connection, it can easily be measured by number of friends that you have, amount of time you spend with friends and family, and that sort of thing. Another existing index is the Gini coefficient, which measures wealth distribution and wealth inequality. But again, that is just a proxy for other things, and that presumes that wealth...
Yeah, there's a whole sector of humor based on running out of toilet paper, right? And feeling the pain of the person who has run out of toilet paper. And there's a whole bunch of comedy based around that. That's a thing. We reduce our options. However, if we do, we should strive for the best quality that is most sustainable, that is accessible to everyone. I agree.
Health solves all other problems, which it certainly helps. It solves a lot of problems, but it doesn't solve all problems. Another potentially valuable framework in order to create these new KPI that we might need to optimize for in post-labor economics would be Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Is everyone getting their basic needs met? Is everyone getting...
You get it.
And there's a lot of overlap between Maslow and SDT, so I don't need to rehash all that. So anyways, this was a really powerful...
Thank you, David. Again, if you're not in the Discord, what are you doing with your life? The video will be uploaded. I am going... Yeah, my man is up. All right. We are going to raid into Jason's society. I will be joining Jason's society in a little bit as part of Stonercast and his fundraising. So if you got somewhere else to be, stick around for the raid. Make me look like big strong streamer so I can peacock and assert my dominance within this space of how amazing I am because the most people listen to me. Blah, 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 right? I appreciate all of you. We will be back Monday. To go over the video we were supposed to watch earlier, because this was better. We'll also be looking probably at another AI Explained. It's more David Wolf about the latest technology. And that's it. All right. I appreciate all of you. Eat some food. Drink your water. Take your meds if you forgot. Chuggy loves you. So do I.